Well. Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. It is a glorious Friday over here. A little bit later start today as I took my own little morning dumps, and now back into it. Plenty to talk about today. Going to be back on Twitch as well, and just released another video last night, of which it's more of a skill-based video in kind of a way. It was born out of frustrations, really, but perhaps that might be relevant or helpful for you out there, and I would like to just put a little bit of a spotlight on that. Anyways, over here, I would like to put the focus now on the Krown application, which we found at app.krowngene.net. And what do we see? We do see plenty of things, actually. We do see Bitcoin dominance still heading up a little bit here. Yesterday was hanging around 62.5%, now just below 63%, of which this is very interesting because we have seen a change of behavior over this last week. When Bitcoin is ranging, we typically expect alts to have a little bit of a nicer time versus the Bitcoin Satoshi pair. And in this case, no, that has not been the case. Or in this case, no, Jesus Christ, be more redundant, you idiot. I don't know English very well. Anyways, my point is that we do see a bit of a change of behavior here, which is a bit of a warning signal, actually. And that's been happening all this week. So I do think that it's safe to say that this is something to really put a consideration on now. Now, I do want to see this matched up with the price action, so we'll check out the Bitcoin dominance chart. Maybe not today, but certainly over the weekend. And with that said, open interest still hanging around the 3 billion mark, now just 2.9.5 billion. But more importantly, we don't really see a range correlated with that just yet. To the top side, we have, but not to the bottom side. So it has been about 3.25 billion to the upside, correlated with the 19,550-ish region. So I do want to see a breakage of that area, which Bitcoin's actually rather far away right now, and to kind of denote the next sort of major melt up into the $22,000 or $23,000 target. As long as that condition is not met, alongside price action as well, of course, then, well, more ranging to come, and maybe even a reversal, as we'll speak about today. Looking at the fear ingredient index, also coming down about 5 points from 94 to an 89. And into the data tab we go, and what do we find here? Only parrot Jesus knows. And what do we see? For real, funny rate not giving us anything, 0.02%. Fear and greed index still kind of hanging in the extremely greedy zone. There's a really good question about this yesterday on Twitch, which, by the way, I'll probably be doing another Twitch stream tonight, assuming that all goes well, which who the fuck knows what happens with that. But more importantly, someone was asking, is the fear and greed index trustworthy on its own? It's like, well, no, you need to match it up with a few other things. Because I think people get the idea that just because it's in the extremely greedy zone, that it has to reverse and we just called an all-time high. Well, obviously that's not the case. We've been living in that region for over a month now, actually going all the way back to early November. And my point is with this is that it's a warning signal. It's like the first preliminary warning signal that you can see for potentially a major high or a major low being put in on the other side. But it needs to be matched up with other more tangible pieces of price action, like, well, price action for one, and structure, trend, all the good stuff. And so it's, it's just a warning signal. It's not actionable in and of itself, and I want to be very clear with that. Looking at the funny rate down here, very interesting actually. We do see Bybit, BitMEX, Huobi, Binance all around 0.01%. OKX and FTX actually posting a negative rate right now, but that basically tells us that there's nothing too crazy going on as it is just yet, and we don't really see anything actionable there. So yes, I think I did already mention this, but I will very likely be on Twitch later today again, and I need to take another sippy sip of my not water. All right, into the charts we go, sirs. Into the charts we go, sirs and zers and z's and zims. And yes, today is going to be CME weekly closure, right? So what does that mean? That means that it's time to prepare. And seeing as the weekly is going to be closing literally today at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, there's a couple things of interest right here that are really going to drive the biases coming into next week. Now, the first and most obvious one, which looks a little bit unlikely as of the current moment in time, but hey, we've all seen weirder things happen in 16 hours and 41 minutes and 8 seconds of trading, and that would be with a weekly closure above the topside shoulder band here. I would be very comfortable with saying, hey, we're going to see new all-time highs coming into next week and probably over the next month, and we will very likely hit that next $22,000 or $23,000 target. Probably in the month of December if that were to happen. Now, for reference, that topside Toronto band is currently sitting at 19,100, and CME futures are currently trading about 18,000 even. So nice $1,100 day, and then yes, keep the trend alive strong. However, if we do close below, or especially a below 18,250 pivot, that same pivot that we were looking at yesterday for the short-term timeframes, then I would be looking for a greater pullback to actually emerge from this, very likely into the mid $16,000 region, the last sort of higher low that we do see on a daily. I believe if we go over to CMEs, or sorry, if we go over to the daily over here on CMEs, yeah, that would be right around here if we're looking at the wick lows into the mid to low, actually $16,000 region, which by the way would be where the bottom side trolling band is right now. Now here's the thing. Here's the next piece of price action that I want to see. Obviously, it's not going to happen today, but if we do see another closure today below basically 18,500 or especially anywhere here or lower, anywhere below 18,250, then we very likely will see on the next tick coming in Monday a cross between the 9 and the 10 simple, or sorry, not the 10 symbol, but the 9 exponential moving average and the 20 simple moving average right here. You can use a 10 symbol if you want as well. It's going to be about the same thing instead of the 9x. All the fucking same thing, really. And that would imply a test down to the bottom side of this range, which I imagine that the trolling band is going to rise up rather aggressively, as we did see just from Thursday to Friday, rose up about, hold on, let's see. This one's going to be about 16,450 to 16, yeah, about $300 actually. So that would likely be coming in right around here, right around the $17,000 region, which is in line with the last higher low. So I would be looking for a test back down there coming into early next week if that condition is met. So there are a few major things to be wary of here, especially as we go into Friday closure. And I do put the most weight on CME chart just in general. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are saying, Krown, that's the gap fill. I mean, I would consider this already filled, actually. I go wick to wick in this case on a daily. And I would have looked and identified the 8th of December as the gap fill, as we said a couple days ago. And I'd still stick with that. And, coming back down to that same region is not the double fill. There's no such thing as a double fill. It's a double fucking rect if that happens, typically speaking. And I do believe that that's likely what we're going to be looking at right here. If I'm going to spoil a little bit of surprises, assuming that Bitcoin does close below that pivot on, today for CMEs, then yes, I very likely do think that we do come back down and stab somewhere around like the mid $16,000 region, give or take a few bucks. Going into the low term timeframes right here on CMEs as well. Is there anything of interest? Or actually, sorry, let's go back to the daily and look at our other points of reference. And the MACD's nuts. Once again, actually getting that one right. Breaking the 9 exponential moving average right here while momentum shifts to the downside. Boom, boom, boom. And we don't see the DMI signal just yet, though. This is the next one that I really want to see here. Excuse me while I sip. This is the one that I really want to see next. If Bitcoin's actually going to not just come back down to that level, but perhaps even create a downtrend. And right now, we obviously do have, or actually, we don't even really have a lower high in place on the daily just yet. We have this is your last high right here. I'd not really consider this a high as well, or if anything, it's complex top. Oh Jesus, I don't want to have to explain that one. But more importantly, this is your last low right here. So coming back down below that region, then yes, we would be in the midst of creating a downtrend for the first time since. Coronavirus dump times, actually. This was the last time that we saw a series of lower lows and lower highs. So that would be rather significant here. If I had to call it right now and say that that's going to happen or not, I'd probably say that it's a little bit like, unlikely. I still actually do remain long-term bullish here. But if that condition is met, you're going to see me turn around to be bearish, at least for looking for moves down another couple $1,000, probably towards around $14,000-ish dollars right here over time. But again, all higher term time frames still bullish if we're looking at the weekly, monthly, bi-monthly, and quarterly, as we've referenced all throughout this week, which I won't do right now. They've been more or less fine, and there's nothing bearish about that on the whole as far as trend goes. So with all of that in mind, I do still think that it's relevant to be reflected on upon that information, because it does keep us in check, or at least myself in check, because this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but we're dealing with big numbers here. So naturally speaking, the ranges are going to be, well, as you can see right here, about $3,000 to $4,000 wide. So we can have a $3,000 to $4,000 essentially dump dildo party right here, from the prior high, and it's actually just within the context of the current trend. Now, is that helpful as a trader who's on 50x margin and has your liquidation price just a couple $100 away? Well, no, you're fucked, because you're employing some pretty poor techniques. But sorry, don't mean to be rude, but seriously, it's kind of ridiculous. But yes, when you do consider the whole right here, is this destroying the context of the current trend? No, not as it is. Still needs to break this prior low right here, as we've been saying all throughout the last couple of weeks, at 17,100, and I believe it's 50 as I go for another sippy sip. So that's the most relevant thing to be looking for today. That will be confirmed and clarified with CME's closure at, I believe it is 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Don't quote me on the closing time though. I actually don't. I actually am not too familiar with futures closing times. When I traded traditional markets, I just traded equity options. So it was just 9:30. Well, I guess it was 8:30 a.m. Central Standard Time to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Nice and easy day, and that was it. But I do know that futures, they have a little bit of a different schedule, and I believe it is 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, alrighty. So with all of that in mind, do we want to see? Yeah, I want to see the DMI also give off a signal here too. Now the DMI plus has come all the way back down to the threshold. The ADX has been losing its strength the whole way, ever since actually we put in the current high, which is actually rather nice there. Or no, sorry, no, it did get the high right here, and then a little bit of divergence calls right there. Fair enough. More importantly, looking at this right now, if we do see this signature, that would also be a damn good indication that probably tells us in advance that Bitcoin is going to actually enter into a downtrend on these time frames, and that would be the DMI minus getting dominant above the threshold while the ADX strengthens. Right now, we don't have that. It's getting pretty damn close, but if we are to expect the bull trend to continue basically from this area, what we'd be looking for is a DMI plus to kind of come back down to baseline, bounce off there, and then the ADX gets strong again. That would be also, by contrast, be a very bullish signal. So with all of that in mind, of course, structure matters most at the end of the day, but the indicators that we just showed right there can give you a little bit of a forwards insight if we do see those sorts of signals being printed. As I go, once again, I'm almost done with my coffee, so no more interruptions from myself, which is probably great. Hey, get out of my face, TradingView. Fuck you. And let's talk about yesterday's price action. So over the last couple of days, we did say that Bitcoin likely to come back down to the 200 simple on the 4 hour. We got our first test right here. Lovely, bounce back up. We got a rejection that we spoke about yesterday at 18.6, which was driving the narrative of looking for another test back down towards the 200 simple. We got that again in the early morning hours. So now what? Well, I mean, this is not the picture of health and fitness right here, but it does look like things do want to come down a little bit further. But this is really the time, in my opinion, where it's best to kind of be a little bit more hands-off. We've had a couple of easy moves right there, a couple of easy scalps on both sides, actually, right here, and right here. Of course, this is always hindsight trading, but I believe that we have been, notifying of these areas for quite some time now. And I don't really have I really don't like having short-term time frame biases coming into Friday, which is today. And the reason why is because usually CME is going to set the tone with its weekly closure, and the short-term timeframes are going to get, bulldozed over, either over the weekend or coming in early next week. So looking at it right now, there are a few obvious areas of interest here, of course. And the first one would be the 200 simple on the 4 hour. And the second one would be yesterday's rejection point, which we can actually lower down here to the actual closure. That's going to be 18,550, we'll call it, all the way up to 18.6 right here. So we can make a liquid zone on both sides, and that will define the current range for the short-term timeframes. It is rather big, to be fair, because, well, we are dealing with big numbers, and that would be between 18.6 on the top side, and on the bottom side, do you want to use a 200 simple, or do you want to use our last closing low price? I think you could do do both, actually, but 17.9 is what we've been running with before. So I'd actually chart it off like this, meaning that yes, if Bitcoin does get back above, let's call it 18,550, closes a 4 hour dildo above there, I would actually turn into a short-term and medium-term bull. Obviously, long-term is still bullish, regardless of which way that I cut it. And I'd target moves back up towards, 19,200, 19,300, all the way up here. I'd actually get rid of this trend line here as well, because it's not all that relevant. But it would, would start to look good. By contrast, what would I be looking for on a continuation point to the downside here? It's a little bit more difficult, to be fair, because trend is in motion right now for the lower term timeframes. We do obviously have a downtrend all the way up to, okay, so 4 hour, 6 hour has it, 8 hour has it, 10 hour has it, 12 hour. 12 hour has it as well, to be fair. Oh, Jesus Christ, man. Here comes the fork, fuckers. Get your spoons out. I'm clinking all the way to my coffee heaven over here. 1 second, my friends. It's really good. It's really good this morning, actually. So yeah, all medium and lower term time frames are now actually currently in a downtrend. Up to a daily. So that is a topic of consideration here, of course, and that would make me a little bit more just erring on the side of the downside for the short term. But where is that next continuation point that would drive targets much lower, actually, towards our next short-term pivot, which would be 17,150, and then below there we got like actual real problems at the prior base at 16,500-ish region. Well, I do think that a 4-hour delta closure below the 200 simple is very obvious for a continuation point right there. But that's all the way at 17.7. Well, to be fair, it's actually not that far away from where we're at right now. So should I stick with that, or should I outlay a more aggressive standpoint for this as well? No, I think I'd stick with that. I would not use 17.9 as a pivot for the short-term time frame. So that was just a targeted region for yesterday's price action. I would not feel comfortable because I don't think that a closure below this region right here would imply a test further south. A closure below the 200 simple certainly would, though. And that's currently at about 17.7, and that also lines up with this pivot right here. And I'm sure that if we pull up our fibs over here, yes, indeed, we do see a level coming in right around there as well. So yes, I would say that that is more relevant for the current price action. And any sort of a closure below there, and we can start to target moves down to the 236, which is going to be 17,150 region. And I would be looking for a short-term bounce here as well, and probably even a short-term bounce at the 382 too. I mean, it's likely to have a short-term bounce, but that bounce very likely gets sold into. I do not think that would be a reversal breaking the 200 simple. I would not look for any sort of short-term reversal until this area right here. Anyways, let me just polish this baby off. These goddamn clinkety clacks. Fucking bitch. Anyways, okay, cool. So, yes, and then of course, if 17, I would potentially be looking for a reversal at 17,150. Of course, selling the 618, which looks like our algo target yesterday, would imply actually 236 targets. So fair enough. However, this is the next area where, I kind of hold my horses once again and want to see price action in real time. So I will not make any further calls, especially coming into a Friday like it is right now with this area right here. But yes, this would be my targeted area for, about a $600 trade if we break the 200 simple, essentially. But I really want to see what I saw on, what we spoke about on CMEs. That's going to drive the greater biases here. And realistically, it's kind of playing with fire. We had a lot of easy trades this week. I think it's time to really just be watching as far as I'm concerned. Motherfucker, man, those plates are so goddamn loud. Jesus Christ. Jesus. Anyways, it's like this is the best time to do it. Okay, we haven't even gone through the low-term time frame oscillators here, so let's check this out. 4-hour Stokes popping back down, actually rejection getting out of the bearish control zone, which is inherently bearish itself. Let's see what Caretakers has to say about that. Yes, they're going to remain to the downside as long as we're essentially following the current downtrend, and our last lower high was 18,350, it looks like. So obviously that's going to change as time goes on, but pressure is to the downside pretty much immediately. And Caretaker would be showing a target actually in the low $17,000 region. So interesting. Very well. It's not necessarily a target. It would be more of like a scalp position right there. So different interpretation, but I do kind of look at that as a little bit of a magnet for current price action. Looking at the 4-hour RSI, what do we see? Back into the bearish control zone we go. This is a little bit more deadly right here, as we haven't really seen a longer stint within this region for a while. Still have rising lows on the 4-hour RSI, of course, but it would imply, yeah, short term another test of the downside here. Yes. Looking at historical volatility percentile, what's going on right here? We do see the expansion signal that we were looking for earlier this week. So I would still look, that would imply that this trend continues to the downside from here. Fair enough. Yeah, 4 hour shows more downside. 3 hour, what do we see right here? Same thing, just a little bit more aggressive with it. We do see obviously this trend line holding in our last few lower highs, going all the way back to 30th of November on the I think that was actually the current high, actually the all-time high in fact. For price action. So I'd be following this one to kind of judge the current strength, and yeah, short term down again. And as long as we're living below this trend line, I wouldn't really be looking for any sort of a greater reversal here, of course. Now, this is very reminiscent of what we saw in the 12-hour on the way up. I'd basically look at it in the same way in suggesting that, hey, short-term time frame downtrend is not over until that trend line is broken. Just when you find something like that works, I typically just abuse it until it abuses me. We also have some hidden bearish divergence, but I think it's very relevant to say that that's already played out. So credit to Caretaker on that one. But that's, well, Yeah, that was about $400 ago. So I think that one's I think that one's already played, and we're still expanding on historical volatility percentile over here as well. So far we're seeing everything kind of fall through with each other. What about the 2-hour over here? Same thing. Bi-hourly Stokes to the downside, straight nosediving. Bi-hourly RSI bearish, playing out bearish divergence, coming back down to the bearish control zone, not good, and expanding from over here, actually from a zero read as well. So rather nice, but not nice for the Boolaws, as they're about to take some red dildo-aws to the face-aws and have a nice morning, and open wide, because it's coming down the hole, Praise Allah. Can you say that? I don't know. Are people going to come and kill me now? Sorry. I mean, I only mean respect, okay? And listen, I'm gonna wish people a Merry Christmas soon too. Don't get your fucking panties in the wad. My dad was actually Jewish. Like, I don't give a fuck about that. It's like, it's well wishes, man. What the fuck's wrong with that? Jesus Christ. I don't really subscribe to any religion, just for before like the comments start coming. Anyways, okay, yeah, so looking at the hourly as well, basically more of the same here. Bearish on all lower term time frames and looking for continuation right here after setting another lower high on the hourly here. So yes, short term down. If I had to call it right now, yeah, Bitcoin probably does break further to the south. Short term target would be 17,550, probably small bounce there. And then do we continue on to the 17,150 pivot? I'd really want to see CME's closure later today, but yeah, look a little bit likely here. I mean, this is basically like a descending triangle in the lows right now. Let's see. So if we were to make a descending triangle off this, how would this look like? All right, so we'd do something like that. Yes, we already got that in there, and our declining highs coming in from our structure right here. And let's see if there's a measure move we made off this as well. Would also imply that maybe we do get another bounce in here. I'm just doing a very bad job of this, by the way, and just so you know. No, actually not matching up with anything else that I have on the board, which is not a good sign. That would actually be suggesting back down to about 17.4. Well, I guess it would be the high of this consolidation right here, but no, not matching up with any of my other greater pivots. So I'm inclined to think that that's just wrong then. We're just drawing some Jesus toast. God damn it, Jesus, get out of my toast. It's goddamn tree fitty Jesus all up in my toasties. And we got a death cross on the 2-hour coming in, fellas. So it was nice knowing you. I just love it when people fucking call that sort of shit out like it's gonna be a death sentence. No, it's. I mean, yes, it matters, but it's a fucking bi-hourly, man. But Krown, a bi-hourly is like 10 fucking 5 minutes in a row. It's like, actually, it's probably more than that, but you get my point. It's actually around 20. Maybe a little more than that too. 24, is that right? Am I doing some bad mental math right now? But yeah, all lower term time frames bearish. So yeah, if I did have to call it right now, Bitcoin does come back down, not just test the 200 exponential moving average, but probably does break it too, and we probably do see 17,150. But again, I do put the most weight on CME's closures today, and I would really refrain from making any greater moves based off that. And I'm probably not going to be trading today, anyways. I feel like we've already had all of the nice and easy ones for this week thus far. And we'll probably get a nice and easy one coming in next week as well, depending upon the way that CME's close. What about 12-hour right here? What do we see? Continuation. 12-hour Stokes, nice and nosediving. I'm curious what would be needed to keep them down on the ground. Actually, sorry, we did that. Yeah, it's the same thing right here too. What about the 12-hour right here? Yeah, showing low 17,000 bucks for the current bearish consolidation, and momentum remains to the downside as long as we're below our last prior high on the 12-hour, which is 18,550. So yes, multiple points of influence at 18,550, which does suggest that as long as we're below there, happy to be, I guess, angled towards the downside. And that also implies that if we get back above there, or if Bitcoin gets back above there, more importantly, then we can talk about bullish things once again. But for right now, short-term bearish, long-term consolidation, and I guess a bullish bias, I suppose. 12-hour RSI, what do we see? Constructive on the whole. There's nothing wrong with this on the whole. Short-term, yes, very bearish, but on the whole, constructive. 12-hour Joule still playing out, but let's see, where is our signal here? Yeah, we're getting very, very close to the fib now. So the signal that we got on the 4th of December at, what was this, 19,600 it looks like. I'd say it's getting extremely close. I'd say it's probably going to be fully played out once you see a test down to the 55 right here on CMEs again. I do not care about signals on spot price action. Yes, sometimes they do play out, but the CME signals just are more, they're just more efficacious in general. So I ignore everything on spot price action, and God fucking damn it, man, you're going to save yourself a lot of pain and hurt if you maybe do the same thing. So for the love of God, man, if you're going to use a Joule, use it on CMEs. It's the chart that matters most. I mean, that holds true for just about every indicator too. At least in my experience. 12-hour historical volatility percentile still contracting. So again, short-term expansion plays out the short-term range within the greater context of the 12-hour, which is defining the more long-term range, which is a consolidation. So again, I do feel justified in the sense that I do think that this is gonna probably end up being a bullish consolidation. But short-term, yes, Bitcoin does come down a little bit further. And of course, I would change my opinion on this whole thing if you see Bitcoin essentially take out the last daily low. What do we see on the daily right here? Daily Stokes, nice and nosediving too. That looks like it ain't popping back up anytime soon. Daily RSI back down below the bullish control zone, kicked out. Again, long term, completely fine. I'd be looking for it to find some support like right smack dab at that 50 line. And historic volatility percentile, kind of doing the same thing as a 12-hour, I imagine, overall. What about the 2-day? Can't really make too much off of this chart as it is. A little bit of bearish divergence, but I'd say that the easy parts of that one's already played out, because this is usually not going to be like a good call anyways. Or actually, we're not on. Let's go to spot here for a second. Yeah, a little bit more obvious on spot, but still. What about the 3-day? Still next level, coming in somewhere around the mid $16,000 region, in line with the 21. Same thing with the 2-day as well, low $17,000 region. So we do have multiple points of confluence at 17,150, and then also 16,500. Those are the two big ones on the horizon for the old cone here. If it does want to travel further south, that I'd really be watching with an intentful eye for potentially a reversal. And then we can talk about moon mode once again, moon boobies, which I absolutely love. Anyways, we are 26 minutes into this video. Let's go talk about MicroStrategy really quick. Actually having a decent day yesterday, it looks like, closing up about 1.5%. I'd actually be looking for it to bounce here. So that is another thing that is boding well for Bitcoin. It came all the way back down, filled the 270 gap, and then popping back up. I'd be looking for this one to test back up towards about 310, 311 today. And that does bode well for spot price action, probably putting in probably trying to find some lows relatively soon. Looking at daily RSI, this is typically a short-term reversal right here when you do come back down to the edge of the zone, and I'd be looking for it to come somewhere back up and test around the exponential whenever that does happen. So I do put a lot of weight on this, because this is basically it's kind of like the closest thing that we have to an ETF for Bitcoin right now. Looking at the weekly, again, came back down, filled the gap as we spoke about earlier this week. I'd be looking for it to trade back up a little bit today. So fair enough, short-term bouncy bounce on this one, and then we'll come back next week, or actually once we get the daily closure today and the weekly closure today. That'll help quite a fair bit as well. What else do we got? What about NASDAQ over here? 12,375. Short-term, a little bit of ranging on the lows. Looks like I was wrong in this one. Well, no, I was wrong initially on this one yesterday, but we were quick to flip on this one below 12.5, and that was driving the target down to 12.250. Nice one. I'd be looking for it to actually give another test back down to 12.250 and probably try another bounce from there as well. I would not get bearish on this one just yet, but I do think it's kind of similar to Bitcoin. I'd be looking for short-term downside here, and then let's come back next week and see what the weeklies look like. I don't really want to make any other further analysis on top of that. Same thing with SPY futures. Short-term down, long-term, I would not get bearish just yet. But short-term is down, yes. I want to see the weekly closure and the daily closure, because these are still more or less fine here. Yeah, short-term probably comes back down actually towards 1625 or 3625 region. Anything else we want to check out while we're here? Maybe Mr. Butyrol. Mr. Butyrol, hello, sir. Hello. If Bitcoin heads down, I'd be looking for this one to tag somewhere back down towards about 520, 525 region. Assuming that Bitcoin does break down. Short-term would be a 530 target for a short-term bounce there as well, very likely implied. But this one does have a lot of pressure down on the short-term time frame. So while I would be looking for a bounce around here, does that bounce get sold into? Again, I want to see the higher term timeframes closures here. 12 hour is going to have a problem here soon too. 10 simple about to cross to the downside of the 21. If you reference the simple moving average cross video, then you know that this is a rather powerful one going on right here. It's almost picture perfect, in fact, and that would drive targets significantly lower, like about 520-ish region, give or take a few bucks. And what do we see on daily right here as well? Same thing essentially. So, Mr. Butyrol, as always, very likely to follow whatever Bitcoin does. So I'd keep an intentful eye on Bitcoin, and as Bitcoin's just an easier chart to read, typically speaking. And if we do see Bitcoin head further south, then I'd be looking at those targets for Mr. Butyrol. And of course, for the short-term timeframes, I mean, if things were to flip back around here, the critical area to the upside is 565. That's the magical number for being Bula-ish in the short term once again. It's rather far away, but fair enough. Always important to talk about those sorts of things because you never know. What about Buteral versus Bitcoin? Oh no, another lower high on a weekly. Oh man. What about my Litecoin Bitcoin? Oh motherfucker. Another lower high. What the hell? Are we going for the full retrace once again? People called me crazy when I said that this was going to get sold into a few weeks ago. And maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but at least I'm crazy on the right on the right side this time. Yeah, still shitty. Most altcoin versus Bitcoin pairings looking absolutely atrocious here. What about Link? Link is the one that can. Link is the chosen one, but no! Oh, fuck my Link. Fuck my Link. I won't repeat that. You know what I'm going to say, Rick James. Okay, so we have a very nasty signal going on right here. Death cross confirmed a couple days ago. We have historical volatility percentile about to expand from a very, very low level. And we actually did break the 377 exponential mean average yesterday for the first time, maybe even in history. No, it did break. No. Yep, first time in history. Get ready for 54,000 Satoshis, bitches. Sorry, just kidding. I say that with respect. Get ready for 54,000 Satoshis. Friends, probably coming back down there. Again, versus the US dollar pairing, it's going to mirror whatever Bitcoin does. What would I be looking for to the downside here? Probably back down to like 10.5, I think it was. Did we already stab that area? Yeah, 10.5 somewhere down, or actually no, not 10.5, about 10.25, somewhere around the 200 simple and 200 exponential average. But I would be looking for a bounce around this region. I'm not bearish on these things long term. I want to be very, clear about that until the conditions that we laid out earlier today are met. So still, have to keep a clairvoyant view on it. What about Uni BTC? No, not my unicorns, not my motherfucking unicorns. Ah, Jesus, man. All right, 31 minutes into this, and it's probably time to start to wrap this bitch up. Let's go back on a Bitcoin over here. And how do we want to do this? Okay, so I want to focus on the most important things first, of course. So let's see. Do we want to start with the weekly? Do we want to start with the daily? We can do this a little bit easier on the daily, I think. Okay, let's wrap this bitch up. Alrighty, so CME closure today for both the daily and obviously the weekly as well. The most important things on the board as it is right now, and what's going to supersede everything else that I do see on a video like this is today's closure. So if we do see a closure on CMEs below the 18,250-ish pivot, I would be looking for next week to trade back down towards the 17,150 or 17,200 higher low that we do see on CMEs. Correlate that with, I believe, the 17,150 or 17,100 low for spot price action. Same shit essentially. So I would be bearish coming into next week, looking for a move to the downside, and it likely lines up with the bottom side Krown band here, which is rising about $300 each and every day, and that would put it at a ripe old price of the low $17,000 region coming into next week. However, if we do see a closure anywhere below our last prior low, the higher low, 17,150 we'll call it, then I would be bearish for an overall reversal. Yes, I do think that things would try a short-term time frame bounce there first, but that bounce very likely to get sold into. And we can start to talk about price action back down to, $14,000 overall would be rather likely. But again, at the end of the day, I'm not in the mood of calling a reversal before it actually does happen, but the conditions for it being laid out are extremely, extremely clear. On the other hand, I would immediately get short-term bullish, medium-term bullish as well. Long-term really hasn't changed because long-term is still an uptrend, so I've been bullish there. In macro, obviously, same thing as well. Monthly is virtually unchanged. But if Bitcoin did close above the 200, not the 200, but the 20 simple today, which is currently hanging around 18,005 or 18,450. It's a little bit further away from current price action, but we've all seen crazier things in a $400 to $500 move in 16 hours of trading. And if that were to happen, I would start to target moves back up towards about 19,400 or 19,500. And this is going to look like an ascending triangle. And we can start to talk about targets into the $22,000 or $23,000 area overall. Going into the short-term timeframes over here, I do think that this is a little bit fraught with peril. We had a lot of easy trades this week. We did get that move down to 17.5, 17.6 multiple times. So I'm really like not that gung ho about these timeframes right now, but we'll go over it anyways. And I would say that the 4 hour and below are all still angled to the downside, implying further downside test towards 17.5 and probably 17.150, as long as Bitcoin is closing below 18,250. That is the short-term pivot. So if Bitcoin does close a 4 hour dildo above 18,250, I probably would be looking for things to at the very least try back up towards 18,550, 18,600, and above there, I would actually get bullish for that same move that we just kind of spoke about on CME. So I mentioned that they work together in conjunction, but right now things are more angled towards the downside. All lower term time frame momentum oscillators are bearish. We see 3 hour in the bearish control zone and crossing the downside. 3 hour, or sorry, that was 4 hour. 3 hours doing the same thing. Bi-hourly, same shit, and hourly already there. And this is all within the context of expanding historical volatility percentile down here on the hourly, bi-hourly, triple hourly, and 4 hourly, all doing the same thing. So likely continuation of trend in this case, and the trend currently is to the downside on the short-term time frame. So areas of interest to the downside, as we said, going to be obvious. Well, I mean, technically we're at one right now at 17.9, but I wouldn't really put too much weight on that. A break of the 200 simple on a 4 hour closure, and yes, I would start target moves down towards 17,150 with a likely bounce somewhere around the 200 exponential average, which, by the way, just so happens to line up with the 382 fib retracement right here at 17,550-ish region. So I would be looking for a bounce along the way. Could this area turn into reversal? Yes, possible, but I need to see it pop back up above 18,250. There's no short-term time frame reversal as long as Bitcoin is below 18,250, and even then, I mean, you really want to see it get back above 18,550. But I think it'd be okay to front run in that decision. At least I would probably take that trade myself. Of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor, but the areas to the downside very well marked off. Of course, below our last prior low, that's where things change on the higher term time frames, and Bitcoin's in bigger problems. And like we said, we could talk about moves down $2,000, but as long as that condition is not met, I'm actually still bullish overall. And I do think that Bitcoin puts in a higher low, whether it be 17.5 or 17.1 or maybe all the way down in the mid $16,000 region. I do think that's going to have a chance to do that. All the way down. So I would not really switch around my long-term time frame analysis until those conditions are met. And short-term, yes, downside, but higher-term time frames still respected. And with that said, I'd like to wish you the best once again. Take care, and until next time.